Stephen Miller here to talk with you about a very important subject, which is how Tom Massie betrayed America, betrayed you, and betrayed your children. The single most important issue affecting the future of our
Stephen Miller is currently having what can only be described as a complete emotional breakdown. And I'm going to be honest, I'm really going to enjoy making this video because I love calling out Stephen Miller and his failed podcaster wife, who, by the way, is about to get a massive payday from the Ellisons, because apparently that is just how our government functions now. But it's not all sunshine and roses in the Miller household, because Stephen Miller is being systematically boxed out of a different house, the White House. This rejection is clearly causing him to lose his grip on reality, leading him to post one of the single weirdest videos I have ever witnessed in my entire life. We are going to get into it all, but before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already and you enjoy our channel, to hit that subscribe button, because it goes a long way in supporting our work. Now, I suspect the election results we saw last night in Kentucky involving Thomas Massie had a lot to do with this meltdown. Today I want to dive into why Stephen Miller is being frozen out, what this means for his political future, and what it says about the future of a MAGA movement that is currently crumbling. It all begins with some recent reporting that surfaced in the Atlantic about Miller being sidelined in this administration. He is no longer in the key meetings, and his toxic policies are no longer front and center. We need to start there, before we get to one of the most truly insane displays I've ever seen from Miller. Stephen Miller's humiliation revealed after he embarrassed Trump. Several former and current officials have said that the president is punishing his top immigration goon. Donald Trump is freezing out top advisor Stephen Miller after he devised one of the most glaring missteps of the president's second term. According to a bombshell new report, Miller, ostensibly the second in command to White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles, has been Trump's point man on immigration for a decade. During Trump's first term, he cooked up the idea to separate migrant children from their mothers at the US border. And in this term, he has pushed hard for 3,000 daily ICE arrests, as well as inflaming dangerous rhetoric against protesters. Miller called Alex Bray, the 37-year-old who was shot dead by border agents in Minnesota in January, a domestic terrorist, putting Trump in a tough position. The 79-year-old did not adopt Miller's description of the protester, the second to die in January, a month that saw DHS assume a softer approach after severe pushback from critics from both sides of the political divide. Trump has since spoken out about Miller's propensity to sometimes go too far, according to a White House advisor who spoke to The Atlantic, so throwing Miller under the bus. Two DHS officials talking about recent funding negotiations said that it was Tom Homan and Markwayne Mullin who led the charge to secure funding for the department on Capitol Hill this year, sans Miller. Miller was involved last year, though not this year. Two others with inside knowledge said that while he still leads daily briefings regarding hands-on immigration matters, his tone has died down of late. So Stephen Miller is being silenced. Stephen Miller isn't speaking out. Stephen Miller isn't involved with the day-to-day administration, and he's being punished by Donald Trump. So Stephen Miller is officially being frozen out. He's being boxed out, and frankly, he's being punished. Donald Trump is clearly livid with him. I'm actually going to show you a clip later in this video that perfectly illustrates how Donald Trump has very publicly put Stephen on his back foot, so definitely stick around for that. But it's glaringly obvious that despite his trip to China, Miller just hasn't had much of a real role in this administration lately. I mean, Stephen Chung went to China. That's just Trump's comms guy. A lot of people went. Elon Musk was there. Everyone was there. I feel like I could have hopped on the plane to China with Donald Trump if I really wanted to. It's not like that summit actually accomplished anything. But think back. When was the last time you saw Stephen Miller on CNN screaming his head off about immigration? When was the last time he gave a major press conference? Or the last time Donald Trump even centered the conversation on mass deportations, the very policy Miller was the architect of? It's probably been since right before Kristi Noem was shown the door. Since then, it's been radio silence from Miller. We haven't seen much of anything from him until, unfortunately, last night, when we saw way too much. Stephen Miller decided to post this unhinged video right ahead of Thomas Massie's election results, which, as we know, was a massive disappointment. This video isn't just a post, it's a visible mental breakdown. That's the only way to describe it. It is a total emotional collapse caught on camera. I want to watch this with you. I have a million thoughts on it, but I'll give you a fair warning. Brace yourself and try to power through to the very end.
Stephen Miller here to talk with you about a very important subject, which is how Tom Massie betrayed America, betrayed you, and betrayed your children. The single most important issue affecting the future of our country is ending the mass third world invasion of America and reversing that invasion. And on the most important issue, on the most important vote, on the most important bill, on the most important day, Tom Massie sided with every House Democrat, every Senate Democrat, Hakeem Jeffries, Nancy Pelosi, and Chuck Schumer against President Trump, against the American people, and against you and your family. When the time came to vote for President Trump's signature border security and immigration enforcement bill, the bill to provide record funding for ICE and Border Patrol and mass deportation, Tom Massie voted no. Tom Massie voted to kill the bill. Tom Massie sided with the House and Senate Democrats over the sovereignty of this republic. I personally called Tom Massie and I said, Tom, this is the most important vote of your life and career. This is the vote to reverse the invasion of America. We need your vote. We need your support. And Tom Massie said we could all pound sand. He voted against Trump. He voted against the American people. He voted against you. He voted to kill the most important bill of his career. That is the real Tom Massie. He sided with the illegals. He sided with the left-wing NGOs. He sided with the refugee industrial complex. And he sided with the radical Democrats and crazy communists instead of siding with you, your family, your children, and your loved ones. That's the truth. That's what you need to hear. That is what you need to know. When America needed him, when you needed him, when President Trump needed him, Tom Massie sided with the radical left and the foreign predators and criminal aliens over the American people.
Okay, first off, I want to say I really appreciate you all for sticking with the show. Honestly, I'm sorry I just put you through that. That was miserable. It was weird. I have no idea why he felt the need to have his face that close to the lens. Just yuck. That was genuinely gross. But let's ask the real question. Why is Stephen Miller doing this? What does he actually have against Thomas Massie on a personal level? I mean, obviously Miller is perfectly aligned with the views of the genocidal Netanyahu government. It's no secret that ICE employs many of the same tactics used by the Israeli military. They actually train together. So maybe there's some shared respect for murderous maniacs there. But what is his beef with Massie? Look, Miller is just acting like Donald Trump's cheerleader. He's desperate to be the right-hand man again. So he's jumping into this feud like a child. This is just Stephen Miller trying to claw his way back into Trump's good graces. It's him saying, oh yeah, I hate Thomas Massie too. Donald, please look at me. Donald, please love me. It is a total collapse from a guy who has clearly been sidelined. Did we see this kind of behavior with anyone else? Miller tweets occasionally, but did he make a bizarre video like this about Marjorie Taylor Greene? Did he go dancing on her political grave? No, he didn't, because her position was a bit more secure. This speaks to a massive, deep-seated insecurity in Stephen Miller. He is terrified of losing his job and his standing in the MAGA hierarchy. He wants to frame Thomas Massie's loss, which he posted this before it even happened, as some kind of personal victory for himself. I don't know how he squares that circle, but that's the image he's trying to project. Him and Trump as a united front. But who does that actually land with? Who is the Stephen Miller audience? Honestly, I shouldn't even give him ideas about Miller camps. We know he'd love that. This video just reeks of pure desperation, especially when you compare it to how Thomas Massie responded last night. Massie didn't scream, he didn't cry, and he didn't start whining about a fake election. He talked about the future, a future that Stephen Miller is definitely not a part of. These people claim to be outsiders, but they are the most insidery insiders you'll ever find. I mean, Stephen Miller's wife is about to have her podcast bought by Larry Ellison. Does it get more establishment than that? No, it doesn't. That's why this Massie clip, especially compared to the next clip of Stephen Miller we're about to see, is incredibly telling.
And it has all along, but why am I hopeful right now? Because if you looked at the crosstab in the polling, and I'm sure if we had exit polling, it would show the same thing. We have the younger demographic. You are patriots, and you will inherit this country, and you will make it better. And I am hopeful because of that. Thank you. We accidentally, I think, didn't mean to do this. It started out as an election and it turned into a movement. I mean, I think people, if you're not tired of politics, if you're not jaded, if you're not cynical, and so many people are, the people that want somebody that'll go along to get along. I've never heard of that strategy, but that seems to be what the voters want. That's what's been promised to them, but not the young voters. I mean, we stirred up something. There is a yearning in this country for somebody who will vote for principles over party. You all don't like bullies, and you don't tolerate them, and I love you for it. You also, yeah, they couldn't, listen.
Now, I've mentioned this a few times, and look, I don't feel like I need to qualify every single statement I make. I don't think you all expect that from me either, but in this specific instance, I really want to. I have deep disagreements with Thomas Massie on a whole host of policies, his fiscal approach, his stance on abortion, and his clearly transphobic positions. I am not a fan of his platform. However, the future he's talking about right now isn't necessarily just about specific policies. It's about the establishment and the status quo versus something fundamentally different, what they'll call the New MAGA or the New America First movement. And let me be crystal clear, that vision does not include Stephen Miller. It just doesn't. What Thomas Massie is articulating is a separation from special interests and the toxic influence of dark money. That is his target. And guess what? Those exact same special interests are what fund Stephen Miller's entire career. They fund the bile he spews on a daily basis. The top 1% is obsessed with keeping us locked in a permanent culture war specifically to distract us from the actual class war. They want you blaming immigrants for your problems instead of looking at their hoarding of wealth. For that, they need someone like Stephen Miller. But Massie doesn't seem interested in that world anymore. And honestly, it looks like nobody in this administration wants to live in Miller's world either. Just listen to Marquain Mullin when he was confronted about some of the rhetoric Miller has used in the past. Watch how desperately he tries to distance himself. To me, this was the most damning clip of the entire hearing.
Ask you about a statement that was made regarding the Preddy killing by Steve Miller in the White House. He said, quote, that Preddy was a domestic terrorist who, quote, tried to assassinate federal law enforcement. Don't you think it was irresponsible and reckless for Stephen Miller to post that claim on X without any evidence, just as you have retracted your statement?
Senator, I believe that question is better asked to Stephen Miller, not myself. I can't speak for him.
Well, Stephen Miller also said, again on Fox News, quote, under President Trump's leadership, we are looking to set a goal of a minimum of 3,000 arrests for ICE every day. If you're confirmed, are you going to be directing ICE to arrest 3,000 people a day?
Sir, once again, can't speak for for Stephen Miller, but I can say the President has tapped me to be the Secretary of Homeland, and I will lead that department, and I'll lead it.
So will you continue that arrest quota of 3,000 people a day?
No quota has been set for me, sir.
Well, in effect, it's a quota if the White House directs the DHS Secretary
the President of the United States sets the policies, and I'll be working with the President. If you have a question for Stephen Miller, please ask him.
Well, I really regret that you are going to stick to those same policies and practices and condone the statements of the White House that are so demeaning to someone who was a victim of lawlessness and recklessness by an ICE officer.
Senator, I didn't say that.
Well, let me ask you then.
That right there is the DHS secretary, the very guy who was supposed to be working hand in hand with Stephen Miller, and he is keeping as much distance as humanly possible. To me, that was the nail in the coffin, even before this story officially broke. It's exactly why I've been so fascinated by this shift. That is Stephen Miller's future. That is what his career is reduced to now, being a toxic asset that nobody wants to touch. And honestly, I find that absolutely delicious. We are going to continue to track this collapse and call out the hypocrisy on this show every single day. If you want to support this work and our mission to expose the truth, as always, please hit that subscribe button and leave a like on this video. If you've stuck around with me until the very end, Drop a blue heart in the comments so I can see who's in this fight with us. Keep on fighting, y'all. Don't let them silence you. And until next time, I'm Liam Prescott, and I'll see you in the next one.